Communication portion of the meeting tonight, no one signed up, so we move along to superintendent's recommendations and reports.
Thank you, Mr. Begley. At this time, I'd like to ask Mrs. Howard to cover the items listed under Personnel Professional and Personnel Support.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Bagley and members of the board, I have several items for your consideration this evening. Under Personnel Professional, number 1, resignations, letter A, and number 2, employment, letters A through H. That concludes all the items I have for your consideration this evening under Personnel Professional.
Thank you, Mrs. Howard. I'll entertain a motion to accept the recommendations.
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Shorter and Mrs. Gundram. Any discussion? Mrs. Lane, call the roll.
Mrs. Shorter?
Yes.
Mrs. Gundram?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Begley?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Begley and members of the board. I also have several items for your consideration this evening under Personnel Support. Number 1, resignations, letters A through E. Number 2, unpaid leave of absence, letters A through E. And number 3, employment, letters A through E. That concludes the items I have for your consideration this evening under Personnel Support.
Thank you again, Mrs. Howard. I'll entertain a motion to accept these recommendations.
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Gundram, Mr. Clark, Mrs. Lane, call the roll.
Mrs. Gundram?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mrs. Shorter?
Yes.
Mr. Begley?
Yes.